This is Wildcat Country.
Larson tipped it. Love has it. Lewis slams it, and Arizona wins it.
The inside scoop on the Arizona Wildcats.
It's Gunnar Maldonado. He's got blockers. Touchdown, Arizona.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to bear down.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country presented by Harrah's Auction Casino. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale, and finally it's June 16th as we record this, and Arizona is not playing any live sports for a couple months. Hey, Shane, they got us further than we could have hoped. The baseball team, thanks for the great run. Yeah. I mean, it is what it is.
We are officially sportsless for a couple months, but it could have been longer. It could have been a whole 3 months, and instead it's 2.5. But we never run out of stuff to talk about. We're going to talk about the baseball team. I do want to say, I know men's basketball and football are the big drivers, and that includes our listenership and viewership. Mm-hmm. And we saw that in our baseball coverage, even when they got to the College World Series. But I'm really proud of what we've done the last few weeks. I think we did a great job covering it. Even though we're just one show a week, like we've always been. We had Chip Hale on, we had Mason White on, we had some great guests from D1 Baseball to analyze the situation and preview Arizona going into the College World Series and just regionals in general. And so I really enjoyed that. I love that we were able to get into it and we were able to get in some nitty gritty when it comes to college baseball. And I know they're not feeling great right now, but big congrats to Chip Hale. And I got to ask him on Zoom before in the press conference before the College World Series started about just what this means to him, and he didn't have a chance to reflect at that point, but I hope he does. He did in Omaha and will over the coming months reflect on how special a ride it was, despite it ending sooner than they would have liked.
Yeah, and I mean, one thing I just want to say about this show is we're not one who's going to break news. You want news? I mean, that's what Mike and Jason do on their podcast. They break news, and they do a great job of it. We are here to discuss and try to give you, to make you think, and to bring on guests that and I appreciate those people who've said in different forums that have said, hey, I appreciate the guests that you guys have on, because we're just trying to do something a little bit different. And I know there's obviously going to be some cannibalism among podcasts of guests, and I get that, but we just want to make you think. And if you want to disagree with me and say that I have a terrible take, like when I said Arizona's going to miss the tournament in basketball, okay, fine. But it made you think, didn't it? So that's what we're doing here in Wildcat Country.
Well, and I mean, let's just be straight about it. This is a side hustle for us. We put a lot of time and effort into it. Don't get us wrong. I mean, we could just talk for like 30 minutes straight and not have any guests on, but we do because we love it. But we have our full-time gigs and we fit this in, and I'm thankful we've done it for almost 5 years now. We started during COVID.
58 months. 58 months.
Okay, not that anyone's counting, but yeah, we've had a lot of chance to talk some great wins, some ugly losses, some head coaching changes. We've had a lot of different coaches and players on the show, and it was fun to be able, even from afar, to be able to cover the run of the baseball team these last few weeks. And we'll do the best we can over the next couple months. But we always have great guests on, and that's not going to change even during the down months.
Well, let's get to buy or sell. Number one, Shane, Arizona went 2-out in Omaha due to poor fundamentals and relief pitching. Buy or sell?
Well, I have to buy that, yeah. And they ran out of gas and got in their own way, certainly in the 8th inning against Louisville. It's easy to forget when teams like Arizona are playing at the high level that they had been playing at. These guys are still college kids, and I think mistakes are more contagious at that age. Panic is more contagious. I think we saw that late in the Louisville game when things were getting away from them. And it was tough because Arizona, they led late against Coastal. They led late against Louisville, and they let both get away. But I do feel bad in particular for Tony Pluta, who his season ended like that because he had a phenomenal season, and I hope he doesn't remember it that way. It wasn't all his fault, but he definitely struggled in the College World Series. But again, things kind of evened out. I mean, we talked about before Super Regionals, Arizona was playing with house money, and I think they were. And let's remember, if it wasn't for a very costly error in the 8th inning of the final game at North Carolina to decide who goes to the College World Series, Arizona might not have made it to Omaha at all.
Probably not.
That's
Yep.
not to say Arizona didn't earn their way there, because they certainly did. Arizona was ranked number one, or North Carolina rather was ranked number one in the country by D1 baseball going into the postseason. But they just didn't have quite enough talent to overcome some of those mistakes, and it showed when you get to that level of competition. But yeah, they got in their own way. They belong there. They just, were a couple of plays and a couple of, a couple of players probably short of making it further.
Yeah, it was. I don't. You can't argue with the Coastal Carolina loss, in my opinion.
No.
They hung with them, but Coastal Carolina is the hottest team in the country. They've
Yep.
won
20,
25 straight
25
games.
now. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna get on them for that one. I thought the loss to Louisville was not great.
It was rough.
I mean, that one wasn't great. I don't know what to say about it. I feel bad for Mason White, who had those two errors in the eighth inning. I feel bad for Pluta, who just didn't have it. But, Summerhill wasn't playing 100% and couldn't track down fly balls in right field. Some bloops. I mean, it was a collection of things. What bothers me is that when you see the fan base, and I understand they're upset at the loss, but like, don't turn on these kids. Don't be a jackass. They had a hell of a year. They got further than any of us expected. And how many people gave two flying hoots about baseball in March?
A lot of people.
You know what?
A lot of people who are upset now definitely didn't start paying attention until maybe after the Big 12 tournament or beyond
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, I was like, all right, this team's going to make the tournament. They're probably going to lose in the first round, and anything beyond that is found money, and they found a lot of money according to that theory.
Well, and consider that the top two seeds in postseason didn't even make it out of regionals.
Right.
Okay. Oregon didn't make it out of regionals. Arizona didn't even have to play Oregon to advance. So you keep it in proper perspective. There was the wackiest postseason tournament in baseball that I can remember, and it's usually a pretty wacky tournament. It's pretty wide open. I would say baseball is a little more wide open even than men's hoops in that regard. So when you consider all that, Arizona, especially they lose to North Carolina 18-2. And 2 days later, they're going to the College World Series. It was a fantastic run, and hopefully just the beginning for Chip Hale and his team. And I'm very proud of what they accomplished, and hopefully they are too.
We have to give them an A if we're grading this season, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, I'll buy that for sure. A trip to the College World Series, a Big 12 championship, conference championship, second straight conference tournament title, and keep in mind they did all that after losing their top three starting pitchers from last season.
Yeah.
That's the thing that's most impressive to me. I didn't think Arizona was going to be able to replace that much talent just like that. But big credit to Chip Hale and Kevin Vance for doing that. I think the team again went about as far as it could with the talent it had.
Yeah.
They didn't quite have elite level talent or enough of it, but they had very good, and they made the most of it when it mattered most throughout the season. They were a pain in the butt to play against. They just wouldn't go away. And I was thinking about this on my car ride home today from work. Is when I think back to the 2024-25 Arizona athletic season, like all sports, all big plays. I think the two big plays I'm going to remember the most from this past sports calendar season was Caleb Love's half-court heave against Iowa State, beyond half court, and Mason White's base hit to put Arizona ahead against North Carolina and essentially send them to the College World Series. Especially because that's the hometown kid, the third generation Arizona baseball player doing it. Those are the two I'm going to remember the most. There might be some others in there that get sprinkled in the highlight films, but those are the two. So yeah, absolutely an A. Now, the downside, of course, or if you look at it that way, is the bar has now been set. The expectations are going to be higher from here on out. Not necessarily a College World Series appearance every year, because as we've seen, even some of the best teams in the
Got to make
country
the postseason every year with
this.
I mean, at the minimum, that's
third. I think a top third finish in the Big 12, a Super Regionals appearance at least once every couple of years, I think is the baseline now. And I think if you asked Chip Hale, he'd say that the same thing. There's no reason for the expectations not to be there going forward.
Yeah, we had Chip Hale on the other week, and I asked him, "Do you consider this a successful season?" He says, "I'll get back to you." If we ask him now, he should say, "Absolutely, no question about it, 100%,
no doubt."
And let's hope he continues to recruit and bring in players that can get Arizona to this level. I mean, they have some pitching coming back, assuming Kramkowski and Smith Bailey come back.
So they got to get Smith Bailey back. That guy was an absolute star throughout their whole postseason run.
Yep, and just work on the bats and losing White and Summerhill is going to be tough among others, but there's some talent to work with. So appreciate them. Now, with that said, Shane, make a bold prediction. It's middle of June. Which of Arizona's five biggest sports teams, we'll say football, basketball, that's men and women, softball, and baseball, will have the most successful season relative to their preseason expectations next year?
Relative to expectations, hard to know what those are gonna be at this point. But you
Well,
know
football's
what?
going to be low.
Yeah,
Women's
it will be
basketball is
low.
going to be low. Men's basketball is going to be
Pretty
rather
high.
high. Baseball is going to be rather high, and softball is going to be, a little bit in between.
Yeah.
Let's say football and men's basketball.
You know what? It's tough because there's some recency bias because the baseball season just ended. But I'm going to say baseball at this point. Yeah, we'll have to see what happens in the transfer portal. But Arizona has a lot of underclassmen who do have the option to return, including Smith Bailey. Don't let him go to the SEC or Texas Tech or any of these other places that have big, deep pockets. Even though I know the house settlement's going to throw a wrinkle into this probably, but I can't make heads or tails of it anymore. But again, I think the college baseball postseason is probably just the biggest crapshoot among all college sports. Sometimes the men's basketball tournament is that crazy. Sometimes it's not. All four number one seeds made it this past year. There's no reason to think that at least they should have a chance to return to Omaha again next season if they reload like they have been. And their pitching staff continues to improve. I think, going back to what Andy Lopez told us a couple of weeks ago, I think that's why Coastal is still doing as well as it is because they have the deepest rotation in baseball. Arizona builds on that. They added another Smith Bailey or Kramkowski, whatever you prefer, then they can go deep again. But I will say baseball. Relative to expectations, men's basketball, it's just so hard to say. I might throw women's basketball in there too. I think Becky Burke's going to have more success in the first season than you might think. I think she's done a great job with recruiting as it is. And I don't think they're going to necessarily be an NCAA tournament team, but I think they're going to be picked toward the bottom of the pack or the Pac-12. Still living in the past, bottom of the Big 12 going into next season. And I wouldn't be surprised if they finished at least toward the middle. So I guess I'd throw them in there as well.
If football makes a bowl game, that would be solid, but I think men's basketball is going to make a run. I think they're going to make a run.
Your Final Four tickets yet?
I have not. Elite Eight. I just have a feeling they're gonna make a run to at least the Elite Eight, and we'll see if that opinion changes. But that's what I'm going with for now. All right, Shane. Speaking of men's basketball, we're gonna have Bruce Pasco on. Looking forward to catching up with him. Always a great guest on this show. It took me 15 minutes to intro that, but love having Bruce on. He's great, and we're gonna talk a lot of basketball. But I want to talk real fast about the scheduling that the Big 12 gave Arizona, that now they play 18 conference games, and Arizona has to play Kansas, ASU, and BYU as their three teams that they play twice. Did the Big 12 hose Arizona in this regard?
Well, I'll answer it this way. You say they have to play these teams. I say they get to play these teams, which I think goes back to our discussion as far as a level of competition throughout the season. Now, I'll concede your point in the fact that if they have to play a tougher schedule, then all 18 game schedules aren't created equal. So some teams are going to have easier schedules, and that might help win the Big 12. I'm just not as concerned about that, and winning the Big 12 tournament, there's still that option. And then, whether you win the conference or not, you'll still have a chance to win the, to go to the NCAA tournament and make a deep run. So no, I kind of wish they had stuck at a 20-game schedule because the Big 12 is that tough, and I like that. I think it toughened Arizona up going into the last NCAA tournament, and if they had played anyone other than Duke, maybe in the Sweet 16, they would have made it further. But no, I'm fine with it. I like they played Kansas twice, BYU twice is interesting. That's already become a pretty good rivalry, so I like that. And then ASU, that's fine. Get to it's the
you have to play ASU
rivalry.
I mean, you have to play
I
ASU
get that. That's fine. I kind of, as much as I like it, but I also I usually sort of dread those matchups, especially when they play in Tempe, because it's kind of like how ASU fans feel like if they lose to U of A in football, it's like losing to an inferior program. And I don't think the disparity is as big in football generally as it is in basketball, but I kind of dread those games because if ASU does happen to win, then we never hear the end of it. But no, I'm okay with it. I think it's an opportunity for Arizona to play better teams, improve their net ranking, and get more experience going to the NCAA tournament, which I think served them well last year.
TV.
Yep.
ESPN, CBS, TNT. They get two Arizona BYU and two Arizona Kansas, and those are big ticket games in this conference.
Yep.
Simple as that. Those will draw eyeballs. And that's why they did it. And you know what? I commend the Big 12. They did it right. Because you know what? Arizona playing West Virginia twice. Does anybody care? Arizona playing Cincinnati, like Central Florida, like Utah, Colorado.
Yeah.
Is ASU going to sell tickets when they play Utah and Colorado? Absolutely not. It's going to be a half-empty bank. You know, it was what I call their
credit union. Credit
whatever
union.
whatever the crap their arena's called. It's going to be half-empty because nobody cares. McKale Center going to be full. And I mean, if you have Arizona season tickets and you're listening to this, congrats. You can make yourself some real money next year if you decided you didn't want to go to a few games. Just like
But
you didn't want to go
don't do that. Don't do that.
Hey, you want to sell and make money and go for it. Shane, we didn't talk about this a while ago. The new court design.
Yeah.
Desiree Francois, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in the third segment, but it's a pretty good idea to change the court, isn't it?
I like it. I think a lot of people are put off, or some people are put off by only having the top half of the cactus logo on the court. I think it looks awesome. And it's not like Arizona. I think it looks good. It's not like Arizona isn't featuring the cactus logo elsewhere. I mean, you see it everywhere now. We saw it on their football helmets last season. We don't tend to remember it fondly because the football season didn't go well, but still,
No.
I think they're featuring the cactus logo more than they probably ever did back in the day. So I like it. For those who wanted to replace the block A at center court with a cactus logo, or go back to the design when Lute Olson was, that's Arizona's primary logo. So that was just never going to happen. But I do think it's a nice example of Desiree listening to the fans, trying to give them something they wanted, even though trying to make everyone happy is an impossible task. So it's not a huge deal one way or the other, but I like it. I think it's a nice nod to the past while making the court still look kind of contemporary too.
Calling all Wildcat fans, did you know that Harrah's Auction Casino is your local home for Caesars Rewards? Every play unlocks perks at more than 50 destinations nationwide. Enjoy free dining in Atlantic City, hotel stays in New Orleans, and exclusive rewards from coast to coast. Sign up today, earn reward credits, and experience nationwide play only at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Caesars Rewards in Arizona. And we are always glad to have Harrah's Auction Casino as our primary sponsor on this program, and hopefully that continues for quite a long time, but a lot to talk about. I know they have some exciting sports bar and stuff like that. We'll have Mike Kintner on in the fall to tell us more about that as that gets coming up here. Would love to go broadcast out there one day. Coming up next, our buddy Bruce Pasco is in Colorado Springs. Let's catch up with him and hear what he has to think about everything Arizona basketball here on Wildcat Country. It is summertime. There are no Arizona active sports that are going on anymore. Sorry, baseball team. And we bring back our friend, the ace reporter, as I like to call him, from the Arizona Daily Star, live from Colorado Springs, where he's covering USA Basketball U19. It is the one, the only Bruce Pasco. Bruce, I'm going to start off with a tough one. You know me. I always go this way. Carter Bryant is going to be a lottery pick next week. Tommy Lloyd played him maybe 20 minutes a game in most cases. Why did Carter Bryant not play more if he's supposedly this good?
That's sort of the one of the interesting questions of the draft, honestly, not just Arizona, but like nationwide. Everybody's saying the polite way to say it is he had a low usage rate at Arizona, but that actually technically can refer to touches or whatever percentage of possessions used, and it's been low. It was low, but I mean his minutes are low. And I actually asked Tommy that last week. What did he make of that? People are all buzzing about it, and kind of predictably he said, it's a team thing. And as we know, who watched him closely early on in the season, Bryant wasn't quite right. A lot of pressure on him. They weren't sure whether to start him or come off the bench. And I think the team was a little disjointed at the time, and he was definitely part of that. The pieces weren't fitting right. And then, what happened is, as a lot of coaches do, and Lloyd always does, he settled on a rotation about late December there, heading in the Big 12, and Bryant was mostly off the bench, and that's when he started actually playing well. The question is, could Lloyd have played him a little more, tweak that rotation a little bit more? And you could certainly make that argument, but I think he was a believer that this was working. They liked Anthony Delorso as a starter. what he brought to him there, and a lot of times Bryant would play maybe more minutes, especially in the postseason. So I mean, I think it worked out. I mean, at the point Lloyd was saying, it was the early stuff, freshman transition, and then putting it in the context of the team he was dealing with. That said, yes, he could have played him more, and that said, you could definitely argue he's a lottery pick. What the heck is going on? But I think it makes a little bit of sense. It's just he definitely was calling for being played more and touching the ball more towards the end of the year.
Yeah, and it's an exception, but I think back to Devin Booker, who was a six man at Kentucky, and so
Yeah.
you just never know how things are going to play out. Bruce, thanks for taking time to join us while you're covering the U19 team in Colorado. I know you're a busy guy as always. Your initial thoughts on what looks like at this point maybe a completed roster for Arizona, adding Ivan Karchenkov. I'm hoping I'm pronouncing his name correctly. Looks like was maybe the last, at least major piece for this team. Your thoughts on paper, it's all we can do right now, compared the makeup of this upcoming team to the Tommy Lloyd's first few. How does it compare? Is it in the same realm you think in terms of talent?
Yeah, I think it's right, especially in comparing to the last couple of years. I think that first year was interesting because he had those super talented NBA guys, but not as much depth, and he's had a little more depth. I think this team, you know, I think it's going to be pretty good. It's going to be top 15, top 20 again at least, and it'll compete in the Big 12. And I think, if you consider the context of NIL craziness this spring and what happened, and the fact that Arizona really wasn't playing that game for the most part, they actually did probably as well as you could expect. I think, they weren't going to go up and pay $3 million or $2 million to buy a guy or have their collective buy a guy. It just wasn't happening in Arizona, and I don't think Tommy Lloyd's a big believer in that anyway. He's more of a believer in paying, the guys going for retention and taking care of those guys. And I think that's why you saw the four guys that are coming back sign rev share deals pretty early on. Came to agreement they wanted to come back. Lloyd said, and I think Arizona, probably gave them as good as offers they would have seen anywhere else in the portal. They didn't even test it. So all things considered, basically, yeah, I think it's pretty much pretty comparable. And you got a little bit different in the sense that some of the real talents can be very young. But on the other hand, your senior leaders, Jade and Bradley, and then there's a kind of a mix of experience, on the wing and up front. So it'll be really interesting to see.
And you're covering Koa Pete out in Colorado, and
Yeah.
then he and Braden Burries are the two big talks of this freshman class. They also have Dwayne Aristode and Bryce James coming in. Are kind of a two-part question, and I know you could probably spend a half hour on it, but do try to condense it. Are Pete and Burries, you think they're going to be as good as advertised? And do you think Aristode and or James may have a chance to break the rotation next season?
Well, I think Pete, yeah, I mean, I just that he's obviously been watching him a lot in this U19 camp. I've seen him play for Perry. I've seen him second. I mean, but this competition at U19 is tremendous, and he is definitely one of the best few guys. Even I saw Tommy Lloyd briefly. He was pretty wrapped up today, but he even looked at me like, "How good is Tommy? How good is Cole Pete?" I mean, just kind of joking. I mean, he's holding his own, and this is U19. There's some guys that are a year and a half older than him, and he's definitely holding his own. He's physically dominant. He moves pretty well for his size. Can finish. He really does a lot of things. Especially I'd say within 15 feet or so, he seems pretty unstoppable. So I mean, he looks college ready to me. Now, Braden Burries, I haven't seen quite as much, but I've heard a lot about him. I seen him once at Section 7 last year. The thing that strikes me about him is he's going to be, he's already 19 years old. He's going to be 20 entering his freshman year, I think. So he's an older freshman, and I think that'll show in his game. So, between him and Jaden Bradley, that's some good experience today as far as that goes. And I think he's pretty good off the ball, but maybe it sounds like Lloyd's counting on him to maybe help out as a point guard, maybe in a similar way as last year with KJ Evans. And then I also have Evan Nelson from Harvard as a potential backup. And then a question about Aristode, I haven't seen either of those guys. I think Aristotle, he's a little bit unknown because he was hurt and missed his senior year at Brewster, but he's played well internationally, played with the Netherlands senior team and impressed some guys. He's certainly got upside. He's long, athletic, can do a lot of things. So I could see him definitely playing a role. And then I think, Ivan Karchenkov, from what it sounds like, is also physically gifted. Might be a, guy who can do a lot of things at, 3, 4, maybe even, yeah, positions. I think he plays even on the ball a little bit when he's playing for his club, and he's playing for Germany, their youth team. So that'll be interesting too. I think Bryce James and Mabil Mawud, I think they're kind of more developmental guys.
What
And
about City Gay? I think his
Gay,
name City Gay. Yeah.
I asked Tommy about him because I wondered, is he in that category too? And it's always, coaches never really want to say, oh yeah, he's a developmental guy. That'll upset the developmental guy. But the indication I got from him was that he has a chance. But I think he's probably more longer term as well. But both, he's really long and gifted. I've just seen a couple clips of him, but I think he kind of fits that mold, but might need to be patient. We'll see. Yeah.
All right, so two-part question here. If I'd asked you in early January and I'd have said, what's the ceiling for Arizona basketball? Did they reach it, in your opinion, by getting to the Sweet 16? And then the second part of that question is, do you believe on paper, based on what you were just saying, that this year's team has a higher ceiling than last year?
Wow, I think they definitely met the ceiling because I mean, entering the year, I I had them as a Sweet 16 team, and that's
Yeah.
where they finished. I think it was kind of the opposite of the year before, where they got everyone hyped up by doing so well early. This time there was kind of, real struggle. I mean, there was a time when they lost to UCLA in early December
Hmm.
there. There was no guarantee they were even going to be in the tournament at that point. So, I think though, we thought they'd turn it around, but I thought they might be like in that 8-9 game and be struggling, in the tournament. And they definitely turned it around. They finished pretty strong, all things considered, figured it out without Krivas, as we were talking earlier. Maybe there's some, maybe it could have been a little better if things are the way things have worked out rotation wise. But I think overall they met it. And I think to your other question, Eric, I think maybe next year, maybe you could see a little more upside perhaps because if health remains, I mean, they'll have, and I say that because because the real talent is so young, and you can just imagine, after 2/3 of a season, those talented freshmen are going to be, really different players than they probably were in November. So, I can see him doing a lot of damage there late next season.
All right, and see that gets me excited. I put a futures bet in on Arizona, thinking they would keep Carter Bryant. So whoops, that was kind of a mistake. But hey, you
Should
know
have
what?
waited.
It's okay. Take my chances at 25 to 1, 30 to 1, whatever it is, next year. All right. Shane's gonna roll his eyes. I'm glad he's on mute right here when I ask this question. Considering the strength of their Big 12 schedule, Bruce, did Tommy Lloyd get a little too aggressive with his non-conference scheduling?
No, I don't think so. I think that the big context here is you have to realize the Big 12 is only going to be 18 games next year. So they lose two games that you never know how it's going to divide, but two games that also could be really tough. So they kind of had to and they're also not playing in an MTE, as they call those tournaments. They're not going to the Bahamas where they could lose 2 or 3 games. They're not going to Maui, or anything like
Let's
that.
hope
So
they never go back to the Bahamas.
Never.
I don't think they will under Tommy Lloyd. And I said the same thing under Sean Miller. They lost 3 games under Sean Miller, and he was never going back, but then he left. So, and now I think Tommy Lloyd is not going back there. I think they'll make these coaches will make an exception for Maui because it's such a spectacular deal there. But
Sure.
none of them like this 3 games in 3 days format. It's just, especially early in season, it's just too much. And if you get in a hole like that, it just can really throw you for a loop early in the season. And that's what happened with Arizona this year, really. Um, Even though, in retrospect, they weren't really awful losses or anything. They were just, it was just a bad deal cumulatively to go in there. They were struggling a little bit, and then really to get off on the wrong foot, being 5-4, whatever at one point. So that won't have. So anyway, they weren't in those tournaments. They're only playing 18 Big 12 games, so they kind of had to add
Okay, that's fair.
at least four, maybe five non-conference games of significance. I felt anyway, and I
Well,
think Lloyd, to his credit, like Miller, well, and like and Lute especially was like this back in the day, where it was kind of aggressive scheduling and. Really, why not? I mean, the fans, especially in this day and age when you got to get fans excited, especially if you're doing neutral sites, you got to get the promoters excited and get some TV excited. And, you just can't play too many of those easy home games.
yeah, and that's what Eric and I have gone back and forth on about is that I just don't think there's any downside to scheduling those games. If you lose them, so what? You're not going to be penalized by the selection committee. You're not going to be penalized in net. And if you win them, then hopefully holds up throughout the season. So
Yeah. Yeah. You just don't want to lose so many that you destroy your confidence
yeah.
or
Well, you
whatever.
would have thought that
And
would have happened
that's
this
many in
year.
a row.
You would have thought after UCLA, I said they were done, Bruce. I'm like, this team's not making the tournament. And I was glad to be wrong.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I thought they'd get it together, but I don't think that's an unreasonable point of view. It was looking pretty dim at that point for them. But I think yeah, and you're right, and I think that's the thing they did. They had probably maybe a little bit too much combined with Bahamas. Again, when you go to those MTs, you don't know what you're going to get exactly. You just know that first game. And combined with playing Wisconsin and Duke and losing those games and then going there and flaming out.
Yeah.
And then they just were wavering. And then they had that Krivas situation. It wasn't, looking like he was gonna come around. Ultimately decided to sit him down, and then boom, UCLA comes and beats him in a completely ugly game. And right, it just looked really dark at that time. But so the key is, yeah, you want to schedule aggressively as they have, and then, don't have more than two in a row. I mean, sprinkle in a home game against, Denver or whatever, which is what this year, and that's usually the formula that
Can,
works.
can we schedule Coastal Carolina so we can beat them at something?
You know,
Maybe
that's
fit them
pretty
in.
funny.
All right. So, Bruce, I think you asked Tommy about this, about the possibility of international players maybe having some sort of issue coming over because of the House NIL settlement and how that all plays out. Do you know, like, is there any concern about the international guys that Arizona's going to bring in as far as their eligibility this season, or is it kind of an unknown at this point?
Well, I mean, everything always seems to work out for the most part. I mean, first it
Yeah.
was was and I, in fact, I did a lot of work on looking into this, talking to people at the U.S., student whatever, and every indication was the international kids aren't eligible for NIL. They can't work a job, and then they lose their citizenship. Well, then all the collectives and everybody else found a way around that to giving them passive income,
Yeah.
as they call it, and you can be part of a collective and go out voluntarily to do things and receive money for that, as long as you didn't have to work for it and take a job. So all these creative things were found around it. So they're still technically illegal or against the student visa rules to make NIL when you're taking a job in the US. But that seems to people are finding ways around that, or it's working or whatever.
I think Hank in Breaking Bad called it extra legal.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the right term
No,
for it.
I don't know, but and then I think that there's a lot of other concerns the government has right now anyway, and I think
Yeah.
that's the bigger concern right now is not NIL as much as can they get their student visas? Are they going to be allowed in here? And I think I asked Mawood is from Sudan, and they had an issue where there was some talk the student visas in the U.S. were going to be revoked if they didn't. There was some negotiation about they wanted to take some people back into Sudan or whatever, refugees or whatever it was. And when I talked to him about it, and I had to check this out after, but the negotiations at the time were doing okay. So maybe it looked like he'd be okay. He's already in the States, so that's a pretty good bet. And Lloyd didn't seem worried about him, but he says there's a couple of guys we're just checking in on and making sure they're okay. And I've got to think that means CD Gouye and Ivan Karchenkov, who are not in the country right now. So, but Karchenkov being from Germany, Gay from Senegal, I don't know of any issues there, but it's just the general climate right now. It seems like, pretty much any international students, at least kind of looking around, you know.
Wouldn't
see
be
what's.
Arizona basketball if there wasn't some eligibility issue concerns, right?
Yeah, and I think the college programs all over the country are probably doing the same thing because
Yeah.
I mean almost every elite program has at least one international player on the roster, right? I remember in the tournament there was talk about Duke's big guy, he's also from Sudan. Was he going to be kicked out of the tournament, or was he, or whatever, or was he going to be eligible for the NBA or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Who knows? But he's fine, supposedly. So
All right.
yeah, but
Well, well, hopefully quick ones for you, and Eric can ask a follow-up if he wants. Just piggybacking on NIL, the House settlement. I know there's already a lawsuit. There's probably going to be more. Who knows how it's all going to play out? Yeah. How do you think that impacts men's basketball in general, or are we really just not going to know until we get to it?
every coach I'm talking to here at USA Basketball, including Grant McCaslin from Texas Tech today, they all say, and the players too, they all say, we don't know because nobody knows. I mean, in
Yeah.
theory, this should help level the playing field because what they're trying to do is, and I've talked to people at U of A about this a lot, everybody, and I'm trying to wrap my head around it. But in theory, what it's supposed to do is basically eliminate the collectives and run all the NIL through the schools. And then the schools can, and then they'll kick in rev shoots, kind of a two-part paycheck, so to speak, or whatever you want to call it, and they're gonna, assign guys, and they're gonna be real opaque about how much they give certain players or how much they give certain sports. But generally, the idea is, and then the collective NIL will be the outside NIL is going to anything over $600 is going to be subject to this clearinghouse or this auditing, and we'll see how that goes. But if in theory that works, that means that you can't have a collective that's going to throw together $3 million to keep JT Toppin or whoever around. It's just not, that would have to be verified that he's getting market value for his name or image or likeness, and maybe they will ultimately find it. But I think that the theory is that you're not going to see those kind of crazy, these 1, 2, $3 million deals for players as much because they're and the top players probably would get more comparable amounts, which could maybe level the field in recruiting a little bit and probably should help Arizona because I think while Arizona's collective was competitive, I don't think it was among the top five or maybe even the top 10.
Yeah.
That's, and I think that's reflected this spring. We saw, this spring was particularly crazy because before when the House settlement signed, when it got approved, and I don't want to go on and bore everybody, but when it got approved, the one thing was as soon as it's approved, that meant that $600 cap went into effect and all the NIL basically had to stop. So before that happened, while this was going on with the judge and all this stuff, the transfer portal was going nuts.
Yeah.
And people knew, okay, we got to give you some money now. We got to get you here because we're not going to be able to do this, or if we are, it's going to be much more difficult once it's signed. And sure enough, it's quieted down since all that, so again, those things in theory shouldn't happen. It just remains to be seen. Does the clearinghouse work? For what is the fair market value? And then you got Title IX issues. Are the women's teams going to claim Title IX because they're not getting the same
Yeah.
revenue share that the men are getting? And
That was there was already a lawsuit filed to that
there
on that
is, and
subject.
it's
Yeah.
not even close.
Yeah.
And so, do you argue, well, it's Title IX, but it's also, I mean, they're clearly arguing, well, the TV money is paying for men. They're not paying for women, so therefore the revenue share should go to the men. But there's a lot of things at play here, and there's just so many things, and we're going to see probably
Pan,
years of additional.
Pandora Pandora's box was opened a couple of years ago, and you can't put that genie back in the bottle.
Yeah,
But yeah, we'll be.
but yeah, but you can say college sports has had, I mean, I think the more money it's been year after year, it's just there's change was inevitable. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
how that change is going to play out.
Yeah, probably going to be fluid for at least the next few years. All right, last question. Circling back to Arizona basketball, early predictions as far as like who do you think is the team or maybe the couple of teams to beat in the Big 12 going into next season as of now?
Oh man, it's hard
Sorry,
to
no, that's
say.
an Eric Cohen kind of question, but I'm
No,
just
I've been so focused on U of A and this like April, I think it was literally I don't think I had a day where I didn't write a story until like April 29th or something. I mean, it was just nuts. So much going on. I've been so focused on them.
That's fair.
I haven't really looked around too much. I will start doing that now, but I know Houston's going to be really good again. They might be number one overall, so you got to go with them.
Yeah.
And Texas Tech's got a lot of guys back, and they had a pretty competitive NIL situation. They got Toppin back and some other key guys, and really well coached group, and so those two will be top. BYU, I think, is going to be outstanding. They've got a lot of guys back, and then Dibansa, I've seen him, watched him this week. He's been, pretty much as advertised as well. And we saw last year, the environment and the support they're getting. I mean, it's crazy. It was interesting to me that Arizona actually have the only three teams that you play double in the Big 12 now with this 18 game schedule, and they had to play Arizona and ASU. They're going to protect the rivalries. So instead of giving them one upper division team and one potential lower, no, they gave them Kansas and BYU.
Yeah.
Well, they gave him ASU though. I mean, there's your lower, Bruce. I mean, come on.
Well, maybe that balances out, but I mean, like ASU got, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe ASU got Colorado, Utah, and Arizona.
They felt bad for him.
They got two potential lower divisions and one upper division. So, I don't
TV
know.
matchups, Bruce. TV
But that's what I'm
matchups.
saying. It's actually, I think that's a lot what it is, which surprised me last year. And I kind of was writing about this, and I think we asked Brent Yormark at the media day before the season, like, why did you not have Arizona play Kansas twice? And I don't think we were asking as much as like, that we want to see it. It's just like fans want to see this. TV guys want to see it. You've got this multi-million-dollar deal with ESPN. Doesn't ESPN want a second Arizona-Kansas game? I mean, like, you'd think that if you were an ESPN executive, that you'd be like, wait, why are you leaving that on the table? Can we have that? So I think maybe that played a little more in their decision making this time around.
I mean, you can't really blame them for that. I think right now we need, some positivity here with football season on the on the getting closer. Football team's not expected to be as good. Basketball, it's exciting. They start off with the defending national champs and that killer non-conference schedule. Do you know of any other scheduling? Do you think that there will be more games that are added, or do you think the non-conference schedule in terms of marquee names is about done?
Yeah, I think that part is done. They just got to fill in some, I think they have a couple of home games left that'll kind of be like what they call them buy games, guarantee games, kind of mid-majors. I don't think they'll play total dogs or anything like that because that hurts your RPI. But, maybe, you know, top 150, top 200 type of teams. I think we're going to see a couple more of those. And then they have that sort of what they're calling an MTE over Thanksgiving week when they play Denver, and somebody else is going to be in that too. I'm not sure what who's those other teams are. They haven't said yet, but as far as marquees, yeah, no, that's it. And I think, but it'll as we talked earlier, I think it'll be a tough schedule.
Don't worry, Eric. It won't get any harder. Okay.
It won't be.
I'm excited. You guys have me excited. And the one guy who made a point in our YouTube the other week was right when he said it's good for the brand recognition of Arizona when they're on ESPN against the defending national champs first game out. You know what? You sold me on that. It's something I didn't consider, and I'll admit that I was wrong. Just if they end up on Peacock, like when they end up on Peacock against Purdue, nobody cares, and that doesn't help us.
Yeah.
So,
That was that was a that was a sort of a semi home and home where the game
right.
at Indiana was controlled by the Big Ten, and so they put it on Peacock. There's nothing anybody could do about it.
All right, I got one last one for you, Bruce. You're gonna shake your head when I ask it, but I love to ask tough questions. It's a fill in the blank. In your opinion, Arizona will make the Final Four by X year. I mean, just
I don't
somebody. I mean, would you say
They,
2030?
they haven't made it since Bruce has been covering
Right,
the teams.
exactly. That's
Yeah.
what 2030. I mean, you could. I just want to see how far out you'll go.
I mean, I don't even know if I can answer that, Eric, because like I don't think what anybody knows what college basketball is going to look like in 27 or
That's
28
true.
in general. I mean, you just got to assume that, yeah, the big programs are going to continue to get big. Tommy Lloyd is, as he says, growing as a head coach. I think there's some evidence to that. But we don't know exactly how some things are going to change in recruiting and this rev share thing. And is it going to get more difficult for him? But it should get, like I said, should get more level so that, I mean, and it's hard to say. It's not like you can say, well, they just got, Sean Elliott as a freshman, and boy, they're going to be really good in 3 or 4 years, or
Right.
who knows who's going to be around next year, much less 3 or 4 years. So,
Shane, what do you think?
uh,
How would you answer that, Shane?
I don't know, 2028.
That's it. I was gonna say 2027.
I just throwing out a number.
2 years. Come on, Tommy, get it done.
you know, yeah, I mean, he's in with some pretty talented class of 26, 27 kids. You never know. And then a key transfer here or there, and as the luck of the draw. I mean,
I'll just throw this out because I one of the Lute Olson's most impressive accomplishments isn't just, I mean, they didn't just get to the tournament year after year. They were a top seed year after year. Like the lowest they were for like a 17-year stretch was a 5 seed, and they were 1 or 2 more often than not. So Tommy Lloyd's kind of already setting that bar, a 1, a 1, a 2, and a 4. We'll see if that's sustainable, but I don't see any reason why it wouldn't be. So I mean, you would think as long as they can keep that up, even by some dumb luck, the stars align, they win 4 games in a row, and they get there at some point.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the team you don't expect. And I think, everybody says you guys would, I'm sure, have an opinion that Lute Olson's 1998 team was better than the 1997 team.
It was.
But 97 won the tournament. And, it's just.
I even remember thinking in 97, Bruce, watching the team, and I was 16, 17 years old at the time. 16, I guess. I remember thinking, wow, next year this team's going to be really good. And then they win the whole thing with Mike Bibby as a freshman. So
I want to ask another one, Bruce.
It could be any time in the next few years, Eric. But I will say your question's valid, and it's really interesting to me because I don't think there might not be any program to this level that's had that much heartbreak over 25 years now.
Right.
They're due. I mean, how long have you been covering the team again? 20 something years?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Well, actually, I was actually at Darren 01. Hate to date myself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but I did not cover the championship team, no.
All right. So, with the exception of that team, obviously, what's the best Arizona team you've covered? If you had to pick one year to say that's the best Arizona team, who is it?
I think the 2003 team really. I mean, that was a long time ago now, but that was really something. They were number 1. I think almost most of the year.
Yeah,
that team lost to Kansas in the Elite Eight. I remember.
Yes, it did.
Kansas,
close game.
Starter, whatever. Tough deal there. That happens in the tournament. That doesn't mean they're not the best team. They might be arguably the best team in history. And then 05, they weren't quite as good, but that was a really good team that almost made the Final Four.
That was my senior year. That's what I would have said is 05 was right there with anyone.
Yeah, and I would say this another version of heartbreak, but you would say if Brandon Ashley didn't get hurt, maybe that year. I think that was
2013. Yeah.
Oh, by the way, Bruce, are you surprised at all to see the success that TJ McConnell's had in the NBA?
The level of it, yeah, but I actually I don't know. I guess I kind of bought into it when Miller started talking a lot about him as a senior year. I believe he even made a comment like he's going to play 10 years in the NBA, and this is his 10th year.
There you go.
And then I went to the combine that year, and just the way he played in that. And I know those little 5-on-5 scrimmages don't mean much, but they do for a point guard. And he was just making some ridiculous passes, and he just had command. And I just thought, you know what, he is going to make it. I don't know how, but he's going to make it. But I didn't think he'd be, just an amazing backup for a team that's in the finals. I thought he'd just stick around, bounce around, and carve out a living and then go into coaching right about now. But he's still playing at a pretty high level. I don't think he'll be in coaching anytime real soon.
I believe he's Arizona's next head coach after Tommy Lloyd, whenever that is. I called my shot years ago. Standing by it. Bruce, always great to talk to you. Thanks for taking a lot of time to answer a lot of the off-season questions, and I'm sure we'll have you back on as the fall comes around.
Yeah, thanks, guys. No problem. It's fun.
Discover more Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino.
Hi, folks. Here are your drinks.
Where having fun means racking up reward credits with the Caesars Rewards loyalty program that can be redeemed for food, free play, hotel stays, and more. Not only here in the city of Maricopa, but also at more than 50 Caesars properties coast to coast. From Harrah's Las Vegas to Caesars Palace in Atlantic City. What are you waiting for? Play for All at Harrah's Auction Casino, the official sponsor of Play.
Always great to catch up with Bruce. He is entertaining, and listen, I mean, he likes to talk, and gives us his thoughts, and you got to appreciate that.
And we talked, Eric, about how the most fun, enjoyable conversations we have on the show, when it's just more like a conversation than a Q&A.
Yeah.
And that's what we ended up doing with Bruce. Like, I threw out some questions, and you did probably too, that we didn't have on our list. We were planning on asking, and we're just shooting the breeze. So enjoyed it, and I'm sure we'll catch up with Bruce again before the season starts.
Let's get our last Shane's standouts for the 2024-2025 Arizona Wildcats season. What do you have for us?
Yeah, well, we talked about the baseball team already, but and we've been focused on them the last couple of weeks. But I definitely want to mention our track and field team, and specifically Zach Eckstein, who finished second at the NCAA Outdoor Championships on Friday in the 110-meter hurdles event. He had a time of 13.13, which is an all-time U of A record.
Wow.
And he's the first men's 110-meter hurdler to be named an All-American at the Outdoor Championships. The first men's 100 from Arizona to be named an All-American, first-team All-American at the Outdoor Championships since 1986, the year Chuck Cecil had his interception return against the Sun Devils. And he's only the third all-time to hit that mark. So, and his time could also qualify him for the Olympics, so we'll keep an eye on that. So big congrats to Zach on that performance. Wanted to make sure we give them a shout out. And then I'll just mention, like everyone knows this already, but T.J. McConnell, Ben Mathurin, what they've done in the NBA Finals. I know that as of now they're losing in Game 5, but Mathurin had a massive game off the bench in Game 3, and then T.J. McConnell with like a 10-5-5. No, he had 5 steals a couple games ago. Who's TJ just makes the teams he plays for better. That's all he does. And so thrilled to see them doing well. I think we both are going to pick the Thunder to win that series, but awesome to see them do well. So wanted to give them a shout out as well, even though everyone already knows how great they are, but I wanted to mention it too.
All right, I want to ask you. We talked about the new court design, and Desiree came in and put that back up for a vote, and it was pretty cool there. If you were the athletic director at Arizona for one day, what's one realistic move you would make? I'll give you some options. Okay. Firing coaches, facilities changes a la what we saw with the court at McKale Center, something with marketing and promotions. What would you do as your move or moves as AD for a day?
Make Jeff Dean the PA announcer for every sport. No. Beyond that, the one thing I do, it is the first thing I thought of when I saw that you wanted to chat about this. I've been screaming this for almost a quarter century now. I wrote about it in the Daily Wildcat back in like 2001 or 2002. Sell naming rights to the football stadium. It's the most generic sounding stadium name in the country. It's 100%. It's not named after anyone like McKale Center is. Get a few $1 million for it if that's an option. Again, I don't know what things are like in the back end. I'm sure Desiree's thought about it, and maybe there's not a viable option, but at some point, sometime, that's got to be an option. I know we don't like to praise ASU, but they did the right thing selling naming rights to their football stadium. And I'm sure their sponsors happy that they got in when they did, considering how ASU did. So I think that's an obvious move, and one that Arizona should have made decades ago, and Desiree may be the right person to get a deal done. But I think that's, like, how many of us actually call it Arizona Stadium? I'll meet you at the stadium. I'll meet you at the football stadium. It's generic. You might as well put some naming rights on it.
100%. Mine would be twofold. First of all, with Arizona Stadium, it's time to go back to grass. We've I think we talked about that with Becca Moros when we were talking to her.
Oh, yeah.
And just it's time to get a grass field just in general. And I mean, I know Rich Rod liked the turf, but it's time to revert back. Okay, that's number one. Number two, incentivize fans, and I've said this before on this show, to go to the football games. We need that place packed, and whatever you have to do to fill the stadium.
What would you do?
Figure it out. What I would do, and I've said this, is I would offer either super cheap concessions or a voucher to anyone with season tickets or a ticket plan for concessions, like Arizona Stadium bucks or Wildcat bucks or something like that, where you can spend it. But we need to fill that stadium. Now, you can look at me and say, well, look at this guy. He just gave up his season tickets after 20 years. I get that. But the thing is, number one, there's no incentive to have the Weber State game, because you can't give those tickets away anyways. Even if I bought them, who am I giving them to?
No.
Nobody's going to go to that game. Give people a reason. You're seeing a trend, and we've talked about this as well. The Falcons started it where it's super cheap concessions. You pay ticket prices, everything like that. Well, once you get in the stadium, your Cokes are $2 and your chicken tenders are $3.
Suns did the same thing this past
Right.
season.
That is what they have. I mean, will it help? Yeah. It would certainly help. Offer more. I mean, you got to find a way. While your team is down, you got to find a way.
Yeah, that's a big marketing question. It really is difficult. And I feel like the football team used to have more support than it did, even when they weren't as good. Like I remember just even watching games on TV back when I was a kid. I could just sense how loud that stadium was back in the day. And, I went to games and, throughout my, time I was in college and after that. And that stadium, when it's full, it's loud.
Loud.
It's gotten very loud. I remember specifically, several games, but specifically the end of the Iowa game when they got 3 straight sacks to end the game. And it was just deafening in there. It was a lot of fun. But I think for whatever reason, Arizona football fans behave a lot like Valley sports fans do. They're kind of, I don't want to say fair weather, but they kind of are. But when they show up, but when the team wins, they'll show up. And that's how Arizona football fans behave. So I just think, the way to put butts in the seats is to win. It's so difficult, especially with TV and late starts and being able to watch, from on a big screen from the comfort of your own home. It's difficult now. I like the concession idea. I like it. I would do it. I'm just skeptical as to whether that's like the big answer to their attendance issues.
The other thing that I would do, I mean, if unlimited money was in play, obviously some of the stadium has to be renovated. There is no need anymore for that top deck on the east side. There, I mean, and I don't know how you would, topple that, and that, I mean, that's millions and millions of dollars. I'm saying if money was not in play, there's no need for that. Make it a smaller stadium. University of Miami is building a 35,000 seat stadium on campus. Arizona doesn't need more than 40,000 seats, if at most.
Yeah, that's probably true.
I mean, yeah.
No, go ahead.
I mean, it's like Chase Field with the Diamondbacks, where they have a 50,000 seat stadium, and the upper deck is always empty.
Well, going back to ASU, that their stadium used to hold like 75,000.
Yeah,
and then they go down to about what Arizona is now, and I think that's been a smart move for them. There's just no need to have those many empty seats every game. Even when they're winning, they're not going to sell that many seats.
I mean, those looking at that when you're in the stadium and that deck is empty, it just kind of like put a tarp on it. Yeah. And just focus on selling the lower bowl. Maybe that's what Arizona should actually try to do. Put a tarp on that upper deck. And unless there's a big game and you need to open up seats, sell out that lower bowl. It's inexcusable when people are sitting way up there and there's still, decent seats on the west side that are empty.
That I think is the most realistic, beyond just winning more games, is the most
and
realistic
lower the concession
suggestion.
prices.
Yeah,
and
I think those are both good suggestions.
Desiree, if you're listening, which you're probably not, you can get my number. I can help you out. Great show, as always, Shane. Baseball team, thanks for a great run. Bruce Pasco, thanks for a great interview. Shane Dale, thanks for a great show. I'm Eric Cohen. Thanks for listening. And as always, bear down.